Okay, so here we go. We're on my HaKorbanot. Anybody remember where we were? Yaakov, you
6:21.
6:21. Oh, good. Okay. Now, so many halachas in one chapter. Uh, it says here he just did a malika to the bird, right? Umavdil. Okay. What does it mean, mavdil? When he pops the bird's neck from behind? No, that's l'shisa. Okay. Mavdil means he should separate the head from the bird entirely. In the olah, he separates it, and the chatas he does not. Okay. The chatas, the bird chatas, he's just to do a malika on the back of the neck, and he's supposed to. By the way, it still is. He has to still cut the simanim. Where the simanim, by the way, when we talk about shchita, the shochet with the knife has to cut the simanim. The simanim are what we refer to as the food pipe and the windpipe, not the veins necessarily. But if you're cutting an animal's neck like that, you're going to hit a few veins and major blood vessels, no matter what type of animal. But the point is to cut the simanim, food pipe and the windpipe. Now, well, when you're shechting, you go back and forth all day long, as you don't, push down and do it. Hagrama and the dechika and all the rest of those, and dislocate it.
Use a scalpel and just cut this.
You could theoretically do it in one long cut, or it depends on how well you do it. But you have to do smooth cutting, back and forth. Learn laws of shechita. Have you ever checked the shechita knife? Okay, so you have to know how to check it. It has to be very smooth. The point is the smooth action, back and forth. So you can do as many back and forths as you need to, as long as you don't start pushing it in, or causing a nick in there, or dislocating the various simanim. Okay. You study shechita yet? No, not yet. I don't. Why did I ask you that? I should ask him that. You study shechita yet? Hey, who's a Kohen? Who's a Kohen? You're not a Kohen. Kohen? No. Kohen? You have a Kohen name. No. Okay. Well. Oh, okay. So no tel the rosh. He takes the head. Umakif beit belikato lamizbeach. And he brings the head close to the mizbeach. Makif. Why do you use the word makif here? I don't know, because it means like bring it close. Because he has to stick the salt on it. With sofagoba melach. What is sofagoba melach? It means he sticks the blood into it. Okay, it's like absorbing, like a svog, right? Sticks it, get it nice and salty in there. Okay. Vizarkal gabeyaishin. He throws the head onto the fire. Don't forget, he's already gotten the blood of the head onto the mizbeach, on the upper half of the mizbeach. When we said also that when it says to throw the whatever onto the fire, it means a mamish throw. Remember, actually has to throw it. Uvalo lagu. And then it comes back to the body of the bird. And he takes out the mur'ah. The mur'ah is, do you have a thing there? It's the digestive tract. Okay?
Yeah.
See? And it shows you could do it because the birds are very small. You could actually find it. It goes straight from the food pipe, which he had just cut, and it goes, you could pretty much tell the windpipe goes into the lungs. And a bird of that size doesn't exactly have massive lungs, so you can tell it's the lungs because the pipe that goes right down to these two lobes that look like lungs. Whereas the food pipe goes down into the kishkas. You'll see there's a stomach, the zefek, and the me'ayim and all that. One smooth, not smooth, but one straight, one way passage through the middle of the bird. Okay, so he takes that out and the skin that's on it, along with the feathers, because he didn't defeather it. It has the skin and feathers and all that. That bnei amiyayim hayotzimima, and because he's taking out this, the stomach with the food pipe, it pulls along the kishkas, the intestines with it. And he throws that onto the Beit HaDeshen. That's where they put the extra ashes. It's not exactly the same fire. Okay, it's I guess it's to the east. If you're going up the ramp, Beit HaDeshen's on the floor there on the east side of the ramp. A person's going up the ramp, he's going northbound. Okay, the ramp is on the south side of the temple courtyard, and the actual mizbeach is right in the center. So he starts from the south, and if he's going north, as he's going up, so the Beis HaDeshen is to his right on the floor there. Okay. By the way, in biblical Hebrew, what is it? Which way is north and which way is south? You should be facing east. That's your orient is east, faced east. So right is south, darom is yamina, and north is smola. Asher mismola demesek means north of Damascus. To the left of Damascus means north of Damascus.
Like when Abraham was trying
Yeah.
with Lord, says in your small
Yeah.
dimension,
You take north or south. Okay. When he says I'll go right, you go left. He meant if you go right, if you go south, I'll go north, or vice versa. Okay. Twice in that parsha we have this idea. So he basically throws that there. So the digestive tract is not burned on the mizbeach. By the way, we're talking about olas ha'of. Wait a minute. So we took out the entire kishkas of this thing, along with a lot of the skin, the feathers, and that's not even burned on the mizbeach. The head was burned on the mizbeach. Normally, when we think of an olah, for example, we talked about a bull just before. When a bull is entirely burned on the mizbeach, it's mamish burned on the mizbeach. You washed out the entrails, but the entrails end up on the mizbeach, and you just keep the skin. But in this case, a large quantity of the bird is already not on the mizbeach. Just to know. And it says v'shisa uto bichnafav, and then you should split it in its feathers, right between the two wings. Splits it down the middle. That's what you were talking about. Biadov below sakin. He is to do this act of splitting the bird down the middle by hand, and not with I forgot to share this. Let me put this on the screen. I'm wondering why I'm not seeing myself. Ta-da! See? Now it's on the screen. Now you can see what we're talking about. So he's to cut it there. Normally, you think it would be easier if a person's dissecting an animal, so he has a knife, right? And this Kamash Balan used to use his hand. Just like, by the way, he didn't do shechita on this bird. He also did that. It was a hand. He did a malika with his nail. So too, ripping out all this thing. Basically, there's no kalim involved in this. They know tzarich lahavdil, but he shouldn't split it entirely, like rip it into two pieces, just make an incision, but he doesn't rip it entirely in half. Okay, the two pieces. Shnemar lo yavdil, v'imivdil kasher. But if he did split it, so it's still kosher. V'sofagoba melach v'zorko gabe aishin. And then the rest of this body that's basically cut down the middle, he also sticks it in all the salt, gets nice and salty, and throws it on his bath. Good. So I guess this is the only thing a kohen can do. Who does the malika? Normally, we saw. Hold on, there's a question coming in. Okay, I don't see that. Normally, a regular Jew can do the shechita. Any korban, shechita is kshera bazar. The slaughter can be done by a non-kohen. It just has to be a kohen catching the blood from, and the rest of the service is done by the kohen. But apparently, it's the kohen who does this malika. The Rambam didn't say malika is there. I could be wrong. Maybe we mentioned it already, but usually, from what we've seen so far, he didn't mention that malika is done by a non-kohen. And the kohen seems to be the one doing all this. Okay, like I said, sometimes we make factual mistakes and we correct them. Okay, well, it's a very different actually. I think it's a mach. So too, if you don't do malika on the animal, the bird, it's ruined. So in that aspect, yes, but we haven't seen this. Well, at least I haven't seen it. I hope that someone correct me. Look, we make mistakes sometimes, like factual mistakes, and then we correct them later. We're not infallible. We actually look forward to people pointing things out to us. Let's say he didn't take out the kishkas, lo hisir tamura, v'lo hanutza, where he didn't take out the feathers with that. V'lo b'nei amayim. Well, this mura we said is like the stomach, the zevek, the gizzard, and the b'nei amayim is the later parts of the intestines. V'lo safigaba melech, or he didn't melach, he didn't get it nice and salty. Kol sheshina ba me'achar tamtzit adam kshera. Whatever of these changes, by the way, things that he basically was after the stage where he squeezed the blood out onto the altar, it is still kosher. This ola, this burnt offering, is still kosher. Now, Ketzad Molikin, we were mentioning this last week. How you do Malika? You guys have a chart there? You have a picture? Ketzad Molikin. Kotseitz v'ored b'tziporen mimul oref. Okay? Or ha'oref. No, mimul oref. Just the backside. What's the backside? Kotseitz. Gets in there, v'ored b'tziporen, just keeps pushing in. By the way, that's essentially different. With shechita, you go back and forth across this part of the neck, the front side of the neck, with the smoothness. But malika is dafka push in the nail. It's an entirely different action than a shechita. It's not like you shechita with the nail. Make sense? That's what you want to say. No.
What?
I thought you wanted to
No, I was
point out.
asking when it says mimul over, does it mean on the back of the neck or on the opposite?
No, it means over here. They just say in the front. It means over here. Mul or po is a biblical expression, by the way. It means over here. If he wants to go side to side like shchita, he can. But standard malika is press in. And if he wants to just push it in straight, dores, dores pnima, just get it right in there so he can. As long as he's using his fingernail. Shchita is very specific. Shchita, you can't cut the way you want. It has to be the exact way that God commanded Moses. How did, by the way, we mentioned this last week. What's the goyim when they do shchita? They want to slaughter in the farmer. He slaughters an animal in his farmyard. What does he do? What's the most basic way? If you want to just make it over with, do it quickly and get it over with. Yeah, nax. Just chop it right off. But you can't do that. Not for shchita, not for malika. You have to stick in there. Okay. V'im nekru simonim eno choshesh. Not only that, if he knocks the simonim, I said those are the windpipe and the food pipe. Those get knocked out of place, dislocated in this process. So eno choshesh, no worries. Why is Rambam saying that? Because if you do that when you're shechting, you've basically created an avela. Well, yeah, so that's bad. V'chotech shidra u'mefareket below rof basar, and he's supposed to cut through the shidra. We said that's the spinal cord, mafreket. That's the actual vertebrae, right? That's what he's hitting. It says he shouldn't cut through all the flesh there. Okay, see below roof basar. Okay, make sure that the flesh stays. Why? By the way, when you're shechting, you don't care about the flesh. You could cut through rov basar when you're doing a regular shechita on an animal or on a bird. The point is you want to make sure to get the simanim. Okay, everything else is just collateral damage or not. It doesn't matter as long as you keep the simanim in place. Okay, and you cut rov the simanim. In this case, if he cuts most of the flesh with his malika, harezo kemesa kodem shiagia l'simanim. If he's actually gotten through most of the animal's flesh, so he's already killed it before he cut the simanim. So that's not a kosher malika. Make sense? When you're shechting, when you're doing a standard shechita, the point is that malika maybe cuts the simanim, and you don't care what else gets cut, vertebrae, flesh, blood vessels, like we mentioned. But in this case, when he's doing malika, he wants to get the food pipe and the windpipe severed properly, at least rov simanim, before he cuts everything else. Well, you have a question there?
So for shchita,
Yeah.
as long as he's doing just a cutting motion, he can practically decapitate the cow.
Yeah, it could end up decapitating. Yeah, what happens? The shechita knife for, let's say, a bull is huge. It's basically a sword. Anybody here ever do a bris milah? No. Okay. God willing. Yeah, you never did the bris yourself? No. Okay, fine. Some people do it. My father-in-law has done many times. I've seen there's a mohel here who's an excellent hand. He's just, he doesn't flinch. He's a very perfect knife to back and forth. Sometimes one quick cut does it, and sometimes you do 1, 2, 3. But it's point is a back and forth. Very smooth, and make sure the blade is nice and sharp. And you sometimes get through the whole thing. Yeah, shchita. Then as long as you get the simanim, that's the whole point. What?
What is talking about example of facade? Is that on the neck of the hair, or that he pushed through the neck until he's at the front now?
So the point is that he has to get the simanim before he gets to rov basar. He might have gotten rov basar. Don't forget, it says here. Let us say the halach we saw last time, umavdil. He eventually causes the head to come off. Okay. The point is that he should go through the spinal cord over here where it's like bony, and make sure to kill, get the simanim before he gets through rov basar. But if he ends up going through rov basar, apparently that's fine. Okay.
Get the simanim.
It says kodem shiagil simanim. Rov basar. You can't get to rov basar before getting to the simanim. Yeah.
How can you get simanim before rov basar? He's starting from here, and the windpipe is here.
Okay, so there was did we see the halacha also that he is going to say that he moves the simanim so that they're more available? It's not in this halacha, but there he's going to mention it. He's going to mention it later also that there's this technique that he does. You can position the bird a certain way so to make sure you get those. Yeah. Okay. There's a way. Like I said, I'd love to see this. I've never seen this done in real life. Shechita I've seen. Bris Mila I've seen, but I've never seen Malika. Well, like I said, the problem is you hope that a person learns shechita enough, and he's doing it to mimche. The first time he does a shechita on a chicken and on a sheep, it's not going to result in nevela. It's going to result in kosher meat. It's not going to be a loss. But the problem is you practice malika outside the mikdash. Even if you do it right, that's a loss. You've created non-kosher food. So you hope you have a guy you can give it to or something. Goyim don't even eat pigeons anymore, right? Doves and pigeons. Anybody eat turtle doves? No, they do. Wow. They make hot dogs out of those things. I don't think it's worth it for hot dog makers. It's easier to just kill the big meaty animals. Yeah. Okay, well, this used to be a yontif treat. What you do is you go to the dovecote before yontif, you designate which pigeons you're going to eat on yontif, and then come yontif, you shech them right then and there. Each pigeon's basically a single serve, delicacy. That's what they used to eat on yontif. Yeah. I wouldn't call them that. Why are they rats? They're clean. They're a clean animal. God wants them on His mizbeach. Yeah, but they only because we leave garbage around. But what's in the olden days? What was garbage that the pigeon eats? Vegetable peels. They don't eat chicken bones. Okay, so it's like chickens. Well, how do you feed your chickens? You give them vegetable scraps, basically, right? Yeah, but what are you supposed to feed them? What are you supposed to feed them? What? They look for bugs, yes, but what do you feed them? You have chickens in your yard. What will Chazal feed the bug? Feed the chickens.
They'll eat other chickens.
Okay, pigeon dogs. Someone wrote pigeon dogs. Okay, fine. Let's finish this halacha. Yes, everybody has what to say. Here, it says here. So we said that the point is to kill the simanim before rob basar, but if he gets the rob basar afterwards, so actually he eventually has to decapitate this thing. Okay, and okay, and in this process of cutting into it, he has to cut the two simanim. Okay, let me just get this right. Okay, cool. The thing, yeah. Rezek, if a person were to do malika with a knife, okay, yeah. Ominat stadim ain't a malika. He used the knife, or he did malika with his thumb, but he did it from the sides. That's not malika. El kamisha chanak o nachar. It's like he strangled the bird. A nachar is basically killed the animal without shchita. Nechira means killing the animal. They usually what they did in order to eat it, but it was non-shchita. By the way, when does the Gemara discuss nechira? The Gemara says that the entire time the Israelites were in the wilderness, they were practicing shechita. By practicing, I don't mean like the doctor practices. It means he has a practice. He does it regularly. I mean, they're in training. So they did not have an obligation to shech their meat. If they wanted to take one of their heads of cattle and eat it, which they had the option to do, they could have just killed it any way they want. Nechira. They could have done like the farm manager, and when he wants to eat a chicken, he decapitate it with the axe. That's what they could have done in the desert. If they wanted to actually do a ritual slaughter, they had to bring it to the Mishkan. That's what's in the middle of Vayikra there, right? That parsha that we don't read on Yom Kippur. In Yom Kippur, we read the first half of Achrei Mos, and after we read the last part of Achrei Mos. But the middle section is left out on Yom Kippur. And that talks about not eating blood and proper slaughter, and how in the desert they were basically allowed. It's implied that if they wanted to slaughter properly, ritually, they had to do it in the tabernacle and allow the Kohanim to process it like a korban. Then it would be a shlamim. But if they just wanted to kill the animal stam, they could have and then eaten it. That was kosher for them until they made it to Eretz Yisrael, and then they had to do shechita from then on. So nechira means killing it without shechita. V'chola oref kasher l'malika, and the entire back of the neck is kosher for malika. See, mimul or po. That means what you and I call the oref. Okay, good. I've never done this, and like I said, it would be good to practice. Actually, I don't think it would be good for a guy like me to practice at all because I'm never gonna. Yeah. I don't get it. Okay. Their dads aren't here, so okay. If anybody wants noisemakers, there's a whole box of noisemakers that they gave here to distribute to the children. Yeah, whistle. I was very surprised. The Rosh Kol today said, "How many kids do you have? Whistles. Here's a whole load of whistles." I'm thinking, do you think I'm going to bring whistles into my house? Okay, that's all I need is like the kids waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning with each other whistling. You know, like just something. Don't give it to kids, but whatever. Everything they give to the kids in the ganim here also is pretty bad. You know, they give junk food and toys you don't want them to have. You have the same experience, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Let's go into the 7th parak. Mitzvah selah sot hachataoth k'mitzvatan hamuraba Torah. Rambam counts it as a positive commandment to, I guess, process the sin offerings, or I think more accurately, how do I translate this? Not sin from the word chet, but there's a dot in the tet. And sometimes the chatei means to purify. So a person who sins does also need to go through this purification. This will explain why certain times a chatath is brought, even though no one has actually sinned. So this is a purification offering. So it should be done as God commanded Moses. How do we perform or what's the proper procedure for a chatas that is eaten? Normally, most chataot are eaten by whom? The Kohanim. However, sometimes you have a chatath of the tzibur that is to be burned, taken out and burned. So he is to slaughter the animal and then apply the blood, as we've already explained. Where do we see this? Well, it was in like a chapter ago. Well, now 2 chapters ago. Umaf shita, and then he is to skin it. This is the animal. Umaf frisha emurim. Umaf shit ota. Okay, so you have it in one word. What do you think yeah, you're right. My version, the printed version says 2 words, umafshit otha. And in the Machon Mamre it says umafshita, which is a contraction. It means the same thing. He is to skin it. Umafrisha emurin, and he is to take out the innards. Right? You said that's what's in there. Umolachani is to salt them. Vizor kanal gabe hayishin. He throws them onto the fires. Vim ratzali tenatam rim bechli shemolichin. Let's say he wants to put the emurim into a vessel in order to bring them up to the mizbeach. That's fine also. Why? Because it's a little bit difficult. You have these are basically internal organs, so it'd be nicer in a kli. Ushar bisarah nechal is a kihuna, and I have an extra word there. I just read Machon Mamre stops here. The ushar habasar or ushar bisarah, what nechal is kihuna is eaten by male kohanim, males of the priesthood. But I have an extra word in my edition over here. It says ba'azara. Okay, in the courtyard of the temple. What do you got? Yeah, you're looking online. Which version are you looking at? Chabad? Really have it online? Cool. So Machon Mamre doesn't have this word. Okay, so I guess what do you have it? Why did they mention male kohanim? What's zichri kahuna as opposed to or their daughters? Sometimes there is sacrificial food, holy food, that is eaten by kohanot. Kohanot sometimes means Kohen's wife, even if she was not born into the priesthood, or Kohen's daughter before she marries a man outside the priesthood. Or if she just wants to play it safe, she's a daughter of a Kohen, she should marry a Kohen, and then she'll be safe for the rest of her life. She'll never be taken out of this category. And by the way, the word Kohenet is used a few times in the Mishnah and the Gemara. It is a state. It does grant certain privileges. Sometimes it means the Kohen's daughter. Sometimes it means the Kohen's wife. Okay, so there's a Mishnayos in Nashim that mentioned this. Sometimes you have to be Medaik. What does it mean when you say Kohenet? Okay, and the Rambam also. Let's see. What about the chataot that are specifically burnt, for which the Kohanim get nothing to eat? Then he cuts them open, incision. Doesn't really rip it because they're talking about an actual chatas, usually is a behemoth. So he does use a knife. Umotzia marine takes out the innards. Vinoteno tan bakli. He puts them into the vessel. Umolechan, he salts them. Vizorkan al gabe ha'ishin. So far, no surprises. Throws them onto the fire. Umotzi she'riatan chutz la'ir. The rest of the animal, which normally would be the meat, most of the animal normally would have been eaten. Now it's taken outside Jerusalem. Umanatachinotan Sham kinitchei ha'olah be'oran. And then we are to chop it up, just like we saw the way to chop up the olah last week, into all the various pieces, the leg, and this leg, and the rib cage, the hind quarters, the head. You remember this. V'sorfinotan sham b'veit hadeshen. And then they are to be burned there in the Beis Hadeshen. Before we mentioned Beis Hadeshen, what we see? The Sirdo Luar Shalal Biado and Vishlan Leveit Hadeshen. Beit Hadeshen, last parak was what? A place near the Mizbeach. Why is it called Beis Hadeshen, by the way? Hadeshen. What's Trumas Hadeshen? We haven't read about that yet. Trumas Hadeshen is mentioned in Parshas Tzav. That's the pregame, basically, for the morning korbanos. There's a lot of deshen on this back. In this case, modern Hebrew deshen means fertilizer. In biblical Hebrew, deshen is the ashes of the korbanos. Right? Why would it mean one way? Because it turns out ashes of a lot of things that you burned, it makes pretty good fertilizer. It's full of like minerals. And in this case, Beis Hadeshen is referring to a place outside the city where they'd actually burn, these holy items, but it wasn't Sir Mizbeach. Okay, different Beis Hadeshen. They're burning it there, and I guess it's because why are they both called Beis Hadeshen? Because things that are burned go there. Okay, just the refuse place. Where was Beis Hadeshen, by the way? So what side of Jerusalem was it? Where did they used to do this? How far outside the city? The problem is, anything that had a structure, we know where the Mount of Olives is. Mount of Olives, right? That's where they used to process the red heifer. And it says exactly where it is, opposite the gates of the temple, the gate of the temple complex and the Shar Nicanor, and you could look into the actual gate of the Ulam from where it was done. So we know where that was. And we know where everything was in the temple. We have maps, we have Maseches Midos, we have the Rambam describing this. Beis Hadeshen, I would imagine there's no actual structure there. It doesn't mean literally house, it just means a place where they take the korbanos to be burned. If there was a place where they were burning these chataos on a regular basis, even 100 years later, there would be no remnant there. You have a brush fire here in Israel. I just saw a brush fire today along the highway, right? It burns the side of a hill. A lot of shrubs got burned in the grass. What does that place look like 2 years later? Do you see all the ashes and the burning? It's gone. It rains a few seasons, and trees grow over it. It's just nature comes again. So I do not know if maybe someone knows archaeology could tell me, where's the Beis Hadeshen? Have they discovered a possible candidate for such a thing in the Kidron Valley? So the fact that it says that he's supposed to take it to a specific designated place. Beis Hadeshen was a known place. It's designated. It's Beis Hadeshen, not just burn it anywhere outside the city and that's it. It was a place that was designated for this.
Was it designated as in there's a specific place now somebody says, oh, this is Beis Hadeshen, or is it just the place that they decide together?
So I think the Sanhedrin, how do you make it decide together? It's the Sanhedrin's decision. Just like the place, where did they throw the scapegoat? Which cliff did they go to for that? So they went out to like the wilderness, right? And they threw the scapegoat off the cliff. Where was that cliff? How far out was it? Was it Male Adumim area? Well, Azazel's not a place on the map. What's the translation of Azazel? Well, I don't know. I really don't know. So, well, all these are questions. I hope that somehow I'll find the answers or someone can enlighten me. Okay, so that's where they're burning. What?
Who was it that decided to turn?
I don't know, but it's a pretty bad idea, I think. What do they used to do? The point that Chazal said is you want to keep Tuma away from things, but Jews wanted to be buried there. Why would Jews want, let's say, understanding classically in Midrashim, why would a Jew want to be buried on Har Hazeisim? Yeah, because in Midrashim about the resurrection, they're going to have to roll under the ground and all that, and where they're going to show up. So people basically wanted front row seats. And they love Eretz Yisrael. But in the olden days, you know what they used to do for cemeteries? How it used to work? If every person who died were to get, let's say, I'm going to use a imperial measurement, a 2x6, a 2 foot by 6 foot plot of land on this earth for perpetuity, eventually we run out of space. Like cemeteries eventually do. They just fill up and that's it. In the Mishnaic times and in biblical times, what they used to do person dies. Well, first you got to bury a person in the burial cave. The burial cave has a few sections called kuchin, within, and basically you get to occupy your grave for about 10 years or so. At which point they could reasonably assume that there's only some bones left, and then the descendants would open up the grave and sweep out the bones and put the bones in the family ossuary. That's the sarcophagus, the big box with just bones, and make room for the next person. So basically, burial didn't take up so much space and didn't create a problem of just making more and more tummy areas. As long as someone's buried there, that area is tumas mace. So Har Hazesim now is covered with tumas mace, which is kind of a problem. How are they going to do paraduma there and everything? Yeah, they'll have to clear something. I don't know. The correct place? I don't know, but the whole point was paraduma. Even when they're bringing the water there and they're bringing the cow and everything, they're trying to keep tuma away. Remember, tumas mace is the thing that the paraduma is supposed to remove. They're basically creating all these impediments to doing the service. How are they going to get everything up there? Did you know that the eastern side of Har Hazesim also has graves now? They've opened up new sections. The western side is the part facing the Temple Mount. Now the south slope is full of graves, and so is the eastern slope. And it goes around to where it's just basically right up to like all these Arab houses, new sections. I know, I was there. I was there at the funeral last year. It was kind of scary. It's like, next to this Arab guy's house, they made new section of Har Hazesim cemetery. Yeah, it's very strange. I can't justify it. They've gone back to building burial caves though. The Hever Kaddish in Jerusalem, and we've seen articles about this. They have the same people make those gigantic tunnels for the trains, have been hired to make a gigantic burial tunnel underneath the cemeteries. A necropolis as they call it. Look, they used to do this type of thing in Europe, but the problem is once again they have no plan to eventually clear out the bones, pinui or likudat samot. They're not going to be doing that. So they're just going to fill up a tunnel full of dead people, and then what? And then they'll have to make another tunnel. So we have to go back to doing the way that Chazal used to do. By the way, I'm pretty confident that if we would just do what Chazal said to do, or just follow their example, then things would be good. But they don't do that anymore. Okay, so I'm not, by the way, planning to be making myself avail myself of the services of the Sefer Kadisha. I'm very much hoping that all of us, around now, will make it to the end. And we'll live to be at Tchias Hamesim. We'll be the generation that will just witness it, not have to actually experience it. Okay, that's the way it should work. So that's what I'm banking on, at least. I don't have a better plan. Let's see. So there are three places where we actually burn this. There's a place where they would burn things in the Azara. Okay, that is let's say. There was a chatas that they were eating, and it got tummy, or the time expired on it. So they burned the meat in the azara. They had a place where they actually just burned leftover meat, not the mizbeach. What's emurim kodshe kalim? That is a shlamim, let's say, or korban pesach, something that a regular Jew can eat. So the emurim, which were supposed to be burned in mizbeach, were somehow disqualified, or they got puzzled. So those have to be burned there. Ufarim usurim shel chataot anisrafot im eira bahem psuol, and they also would burn there the bulls and the he goats of these burnt offerings that had to be burned outside the city. If a psul happened to them, at what point? Bein lifnei zrika, bein lachar zrika. If the psul happened while before the blood was thrown or after the blood was thrown, for example, if they were contaminated, nitmeu, o shiatzu chutz lazara ad sheligias manam, let's say, or their meat was taken out of the azara before it came time to actually remove them. The chatas and nisrefes is eventually going to be taken out of the azara and taken out of the city and burnt, right? That's what's going to happen to it eventually. But if the Kohen jumps the gun, the Kohen who's in charge of, let's say, taking it out and burning it, takes it out of the azara just a little bit too early, he's ruined it. Now it has to stay in the azara and be burned as disqualified meat at this place of burning in the azara. Make sense? If it's confusing, you should read this Rambam again. But that's what it's going to be taken out of the city by a Kohen and burned in Beis Hadeshen somewhere, I don't know, at Yad Avshalom, some place there where they have the base addition. If the Kohen accidentally takes it out of the Azara too early, it crosses the line. They're going, no, we didn't do whatever process that's supposed to be done. He's now ruined it. It'll have to stay put in the Azara. It's not going to be burned on this Mizbeach. It's just going to be burned as in this other place as a disqualified offering. Okay, and there's this place in the Azara. I also don't know where it is in the Azara. I think that he's going to describe it here. Okay, he's gonna say it, but it's somewhere in the Azara. It's not the Mizbeach. Okay. Oh, lon habasar. He waited too long with the meat. It went past its expiration date. How much time do you have to eat a chatos? Day and the night, right? Oh, lanu I'm room shelhem. Or he didn't put the emurim on the Mizbeach in time. So all these would disqualify the chatos and srefes. Instead of burning it outside where it's supposed to be burned, it'll have to stay in the Azara and be burned somewhere else, not on the Mizbeach. The second place where they might have burned stuff was on Harabayas, and that's called the Bira in this case. Sorfim lifnei habira. Bira means the capital city, or just a really big house. That's what it refers to. Uvo sorfin chataot anisrafot imer rabahem psul achar shiatzu min azara. And this is where they take out the chatas and the shrefes to be burned. If the psul happened to it, once that azara. Why? The chatas and shrefes is take it out of the azara. That's good. It has to go out of the azara. It has to leave the whole city. But somewhere on Harabayas, after it left the azara and before it left the city, I guess, it got contaminated. Hamei Kohen walked over and touched it. He ruined it. So now you have to burn it somewhere else in Harabayas. It didn't make it to its destination. Okay. In the last place, Mokom Shlishi Chutz Yerushalayim V'Uanikra Beis Hadeshen. And then there's this third place outside Jerusalem mentioned before that. It's also called Beis Hadeshen. Bisham Sorfim Chataoth Hanisrafot. That's the proper place to burn these non-eaten, burned sin offerings. Bisman Shein Nisrafot Mitzvatan. If they're actually going to be burned according to their mitzvah. So Chatas and Nisrefes will always end up burned. Sometimes it'll end up burned properly outside Jerusalem. Sometimes it'll end up being burned in the courtyard, but not on Mizbeach, and that's because it got disqualified in the Azara. Sometimes it'll get burned outside the Azara, but on Harabayas because it got disqualified outside the Azara. And sometimes it'll actually make it to its destination. Okay. I'd love to see all this. I wonder how often this type of thing happened. It's like they had this. They knew there was a place in the Azara where they had to burn a chatas and srefes that got disqualified too early in the process. There was a place on Harabayas where they occasionally burned these sin offerings because it made it out of the Azara properly without getting contaminated, but somehow it got ruined before it made it to its final destination. Well, I saw that there was a. Were you here week? Was it this week or last week? Was it 2 weeks ago or this Shabbos? There was a lizard in the base mattress when I came here, 4:00 in the afternoon. Did I show it to you? I was very surprised. Yeah, it's very surprising. And found a cockroach this morning. Thank God it was dead. It was just like we were cleaning up and like cockroaches are not shrutzim that give tuma though. No bugs are not. They have to be lizards or rodents. The Shmona shrutzim are all basically. They have a picture in the back. They're all basically rodents or reptiles. Sorry, rodents or reptiles. Lizards are included, but not bugs. I mean, bugs are shkutzim and ramasim. So there's all sorts of isur achila, but they don't have the isur tuma, the tuma that the shrutzim have, like mice and rats and lizards. Well, yeah, it's good to know. So as a kohen, you don't have to worry about that. The problem is when we talk about the chickens, kohanim shouldn't have chickens around. Yehuda, you have Yoshua, you have chickens? Yeah. So they say kohanim shouldn't have chickens around because chickens sometimes do get lizards. There's some really small lizards around here. Oh, you're looking at the picture for them in the back. So there are some that are actually picked up by chickens. I told you I found a few dead ones. They eventually die, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Okay. Where are we? Usrepat kol nisrafin kisherabazar uvalaylo. The burning of all of these katot that have to be burned, whatever it is, they're not on this beach. Kosher old Azar can do it, and it can be done at night, like Hector Halavim. But Azar can do it. That's also the amazing thing. The Kohanim can eventually hand this off to a non-Kohen to burn it. It's Remember, it's a psul. Okay. V'chol nisrafim chutz lazara. Whatever's burnt outside the azara, either in the bira or in the base addition, kol ha'etzim ksherin l'sreifatan, afilu b'kashu v'gvava. Any wood is good for it. By eitzim means anything used as firewood, even if it's not necessarily wood. He could use a kash. He could use straw and gvava, out of leftovers from the olive press. Whatever burns. Basically, anything that was plant matter burns well, as long as it's dry. Okay, you can press it, you burn it. You can use whatever fuel you want. In the temple, what they use is eitzim, nice pre-selected wood. Make sure it had no bugs in it, no worms, right? And technically speaking, we saw that you could use other things as eitzim. We talked about, let's say, even disqualified korbanos, like the seor and the devash, right? You're going to use as fuel on the fire apples. Technically speaking, we saw that you could do that on Mizbeach. Okay, so that's when eitzim means. It means the things you burn for fuel. It says there al eitzim ba'esh, on wood or on sticks in fire. Eish b'kol makom. It just has to be however you get the fire going. It makes me want to wonder. By the way, I think we discussed this also. Could you use gas? Could they build this area for burning the korbanos in the bira instead of just getting random firewood? Could a future base of mikdash run on gas? Just use natural gas as the fire starter.
It doesn't really sound very much like eitzim.
Well, it says eish b'kol makom. V'lama nermar eitzim. So why did it say sticks? Lotzias asid v'esaremetz. So you don't use that have been heated. Seed is plaster, and remetz is just dirt.
I would say if you can't use something physical
But seed and remetz got heated up by the sun or something like that, and now they have residual heat, and they could burn things. But if you have an actual fire, those are not considered fire. But coals are considered fire. Burning natural gas, that's an actual fire. HB kol makom. Seed and remetz are not fire. They're just super hot mineral that you could use to burn things.
The problem is that it's not aged, and why they make eitzim and not aged.
Well, because those are very hot sometimes. So stoking them can be hot. It's a tolda of ish. Yeah. Okay, next halacha. Anybody notice any difference when I'm reading here and what's in the printed edition? Chatas ha'of. That's very interesting. The olas ha'of is burned on the mizbeach, right? We just saw that. What's the difference between chatas ha'of and olas ha'of? So now he's going to talk about chatas ha'of. Chatas ha'of ketzad ha'yatha na'aseh. How would you do this? Molek otha, not molka. 2 words. Molek otha, the karen dromit ma'ravit. He would do this whole popping the neck thing. Which side? On the southwest corner, not the southeast, southwest. That means to the left of the ramp. Okay. Kamosha biarnu, as we explained. He goes in, makes the incision with his fingernail until he cuts the simanim. That's the windpipe and food pipe. O rubo shel chad mehan, or at least the majority of one of them. And then what? And he should not separate the head from the body. With an ola, he could. If he did this, the sacrifice has now been disqualified, and he has to be lashed, assuming he did it on purpose. If he did it b'shogeg, remember, person does a thing like that, he is not to be punished. The shogeg is not punished the same way. He's not lashed. Shnemar umalaket rasho mimul or po v'lo yavdil. With the chatas, he is to do this malik on the back side of its neck, but he is not to sever the head, separate the head from the body.
We learned
Well,
that there's you saw that you were careful from the lawyer deal. And when we said they don't say love deal shnemot, lawyer deal. We deal kasher.
Because look in the context. Vishisa utobich natav lo yavdil. That was talking about the lo yavdil you're talking about was splitting the body open. So in that case, he is to v'shisau tobich nafav. He makes a big incision in the middle, but he's not to lo yavdil. In that case, do not rip it entirely in half. It wasn't
Why don't we went from the Shabbos? It's also in the
because here it's talking about the body being split in half, and here your yavdil means separating the head from the body. Different context.
The context is different. The wording is
The
similar.
word is similar, but it's like we had that word position before. Position means many different things. Okay. In one case, when you're talking about a head, lo yavdil means make sure not to sever the head. When it talks about splitting the animal open, lo yavdil means just don't split it all the way. Okay. Different context. We could ask okay. One is talking about the head, one is talking about the body. Oh, good. So that's the good one. So make sure to do two different types of malika. It's different from the malika of an olah. Kohen has to know which bird is for what, because normally these birds come in pairs. What is a woman who gave birth, right? So she brings a pair of birds, right? And often you bring a pair of birds, one's a chatas and one's an olah. So it's very important that the Kohen know which one is which, especially when it's processing it. And if one goes lost, what happens? Then you have all these different permutations, and the pairing. You know what I'm talking about? Studying the maths. This is your Masechta. Have you learned Keenum yet? Are you going to write a doctorate about it? Every good yeshiva bucker learns Keenum in mathematics, does something on that. Yeah. Look it up. There's a whole load of everybody's been. Okay, so I'm waiting. Okay. So the Kohen has to know this. Where we said this. So he does that. Yeah, Zion. Umazemi dama al kiram is bad. And he's once again he sprinkles from the blood onto the wall of the altar. Lamata me'am so, but this time below the halfway point. The ola was above the halfway point. The chatas is below. Ushiari adam, and the leftover blood mit matzim al yesod. Leftover blood is to be squeezed out onto the base of the altar. Shnemar, as it says in the pasuk, nishar badam yimatzeh el yesod hamizbeach. Leftover blood should be yimatzeh. Sorry, I said yimatzeh like a segel. I meant to say ray. Okay. It should be squeezed out onto the base of the altar. Pretty much explicit right there. Mikalal shanithina al kir. This implies that the first blood was on the wall in the Mizbeach. Shayarin shalo mitmatzin el hayesod. Okay, and the leftovers, whatever's left, that should be put onto the altar. V'zeu kir hatachton. So this is the lower side. How do you do it? Like, if I wanted to squeeze the blood out onto the altar, but make sure that the blood eventually gets to the yesod, it must be I'm doing this on the lower half of the mizbeach. Because if I do it in the upper half, the blood will make it to that rim around the mizbeach. What we said was the sovev, and then it won't get to the yesod. So it must be the chatas has to be done on the lower half of the mizbeach. Excuse me, I'm trying to compete with these kids. This is my second cup, right? Yeah, amazing. Well,
timings. If you want to make and the
no, Arvis. Okay, we'll stop in 3 minutes. We'll give you guys 5 minutes to run across the street. You all want to daven, right? Yeah, I assume everybody's Jewish. No, you're okay. Okay. I said this is my first stop this evening. Okay. Umitsui dam chatat of ma'akev. Squeezing out the blood of this bird sacrifice, this bird chatas, that's ma'akev. It has to be done. Ve'en lam mizbeach ba. Okay.
So
Well,
does he just like the blood out of the bird? Or does he actually squeeze
mitmatzeh. So we saw before, he like squeezes it out. Okay. Ve'en lam mizbeach ba. Nothing else is put on the mizbeach, just the blood. Ela dama. Blood on the mizbeach. That's it. We're not going to put anything else on the mizbeach. V'ashar nechal is zechrei kuna kivasar chatat ha'beimah. The rest is eaten by the Kohanim. They take this bird and they eat it, like people used to do on Yontif. Remember, they eat pigeons on Yontif. Okay. Here he talks about the technical aspects. There should be a picture here. I have a picture here how they do malika. Let's finish with this. So how is he supposed to hold the chatas? Remember, Rambam here is not talking about malika of an olah. Why? An olah, he goes straight through and even decapitate it. Right? Eventually, that's the goal. So this is a more gentle malika. So you see this picture over here, how to hold the bird? You see that? Notice he's doing the right hand. Tell it's a right hand over here. Do you have a picture? I have a good picture. How he does this. He says, "Ochez shtei ragleha bein shtei atzbotav." Okay. Ushne gabeha bein shtei etzbotav. Okay. The feet are held in two fingers, and the wings in another two fingers. Umotech savara al rochav shtei etzbotav umolek. Then he stretches its neck along the length of his two fingers, and then he does malika. Apparently, not with the hand that he's holding. That's with which he's holding it. Makbili shows he uses one hand to do it. I understand that he's able to do. I most times you try to catch a bird, it flies away. But apparently, people knew how to like hold on to birds and not let them escape. Right? I'm sure. Well, people used to be handlers. I know most people would just be startled by the bird; they would just let it fly away. So I guess they had a way to make sure this didn't happen. I don't, like I said, I've never seen anybody do it. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll stop here. I'm going to make a bracha so you guys can go. We should have practical experience keeping these halachos.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.